I want you to imagine the exact moment your entire marriage turns into a lie. Not a slow realization, not a gradual suspicion. One single second where everything you believed about your life collapses, and you're still standing there holding his jacket, smiling, because you haven't caught up to what your body already knows. That was me, on a Tuesday, in my own hallway, holding my husband's blazer because I was about to hang it up like I had 1,000 times before. And that's when I smelled it. Not his cologne. Something floral, something expensive, something that had never once belonged to our house. My name is Elena, and for 11 years I believed I had built a good life. A husband named Marcus who ran a mid-sized construction firm. A house we renovated together, board by board. 2 kids who still believed their father hung the moon. And a version of myself that I thought was secure, competent, loved. I stood in that hallway for almost a full minute before I moved. I didn't cry. I didn't call out his name. I did something that would define the next 4 months of my life. I put the jacket back exactly where it was, and I said nothing. Because here is the first thing you need to understand about me. I don't react. I observe. And that night, lying next to Marcus while he scrolled through his phone with the screen tilted just slightly away from me, I started paying attention to everything I had trained myself not to see. The late nights that had crept from occasional to routine. The phone he now took into the bathroom. The new gym membership at a place 40 minutes from his office when there were 3 gyms closer to home. The way he'd started saying "we" about business trips that used to be solo. I had seen all of it. I had simply chosen, the way so many of us do, to file it under normal, under busy, under nothing. The Perfume ended that filing system permanently. For the next 6 weeks, I didn't confront him. I became a student of my own marriage. I learned his passwords by watching his hands, not his screen. I found a second phone taped inside a duffel bag in the garage, the kind you buy with cash at a gas station. I found hotel charges disguised as supplier invoices in the business account I still had access to, because Marcus had never once imagined I paid attention to the books. Her name was Jessica, 29, a marketing consultant his firm had hired 8 months earlier. There were photos. There were messages that made my stomach turn in ways I won't describe here. Because you don't need the details to understand the shape of the betrayal. What you need to understand is what I did with what I found. I did not confront him in anger. I did not throw his things on the lawn. I did not call Jessica screaming. Instead, I did something far more dangerous. I made a plan. See, Marcus had built his entire business on a reputation of trust. Homeowners hired him because he was the family man contractor, the guy who brought his kids to job sites, who sponsored the Little League team, who everyone in 3 counties believed was exactly what he appeared to be. That reputation was worth more to him than the company itself. And I was the only person alive who could take it apart, piece by piece, without ever raising my voice. The first thing I did was quietly transfer my portion of our joint accounts into something entirely separate. Not stolen. Mine. Money I had earned, saved, and was legally entitled to. I consulted a lawyer, not to file yet, but to understand exactly what protections existed for me and our children before I made a single, visible move. This part matters more than people think. So many women burn everything down in one furious night and hand their husbands the moral high ground by acting first. I refused to give Marcus that gift. Then I started documenting. Every hotel charge, every message thread, screenshotted and backed up in 3 places. Every conversation where he lied to my face about working late, time-stamped against the location data his own phone had quietly been logging. I built a file that wasn't emotional. It was evidence. During those 6 weeks, there were moments I almost broke my own rule of silence. Like the night Marcus came home smelling like her again, kissed our daughter goodnight, and then sat across from me at dinner asking how my day was. Completely at ease, completely convinced he was untouchable. I remember gripping my fork so hard my knuckles went white under the table while I answered him calmly, describing a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, because I had learned that the version of me who stayed calm was the version who was winning. I also spent those weeks rebuilding a version of myself that had quietly disappeared over 11 years of marriage. I updated my resume during nap times. I reached out to a former colleague about freelance consulting work, not because I needed the money immediately, but because I needed to know, with total certainty, that I could stand entirely on my own before I made a single visible move. Financial dependence is the leash so many people use to keep someone silent, and I was determined that Marcus would never be able to use it on me. There was a night about halfway through when Marcus almost caught me. I was photographing bank statements at 2 in the morning at the kitchen table when I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I had maybe 4 seconds. I closed the folder, opened a recipe website on my laptop instead, and by the time he walked in, rubbing his eyes and asking why I was still awake, I was calmly telling him I couldn't sleep and was planning next week's dinners. He believed me instantly, because he had never once considered that the woman who managed his household could also be quietly building the case that would end his double life. The second thing I did was reconnect with an old friend from college, someone who now worked in local journalism covering small business features. I didn't ask her to write anything. Not yet. I simply mentioned, in passing, over coffee, that Marcus's company was up for a Family Business of the Year nomination from the Chamber of Commerce, a nomination he had personally lobbied for, because it would triple his referral business overnight. The third thing I did was wait for the nomination ceremony. You have to understand what that room looked like. 200 people, local business leaders, his parents, our children, dressed up, so proud of their father walking toward that podium. Jessica was there too, seated near the back, introduced to everyone as a marketing consultant for the firm, which was, in the most literal sense, still technically true. Marcus gave his acceptance speech about family values, about building something you could be proud to hand down to your kids, about how none of it would matter without the people who stood behind him. He looked right at me when he said that last part. I smiled. I clapped. And I did not say a single word. 2 days later, my lawyer filed. Not a messy public divorce with accusations flying. A clean, documented, ironclad filing built on evidence Marcus never knew existed, requesting an equitable division that accounted for marital assets he had spent on hotels and gifts for another woman, all itemized, all backed by receipts, all impossible to dispute in front of a judge. The business? Untouched by scandal, publicly. I never leaked a single detail to my journalist friend. I never posted anything online. I never told his parents, his employees, or a single person at that ceremony what I knew. Because here's the truth I learned in those 6 weeks of silent research. Public revenge feels good for exactly one night, and then it becomes your identity. Quiet, precise consequences last a lifetime. Instead, the consequences arrived through the only channel Marcus couldn't spin: the courts, the financial records that spoke for themselves, the custody evaluation that quietly, factually noted a pattern of dishonesty and absence that judges take very seriously. He lost far more in that courtroom, calmly and legally, than any public confrontation could have cost him. Jessica lasted 4 months after the divorce was finalized. Apparently, a man who lies fluently to his wife of 11 years doesn't suddenly become honest for the next woman. I heard this secondhand, from someone at the firm, delivered with the kind of satisfaction you only get from watching a prediction come true exactly as you expected. As for the company, the one built on the image of the perfect family man, it still exists. Marcus still runs it, but he runs it alone now, in a house that isn't the one we built together. Seeing our children on a schedule determined by a judge who read a file I built with steady hands and a closed mouth for 6 straight weeks. People ask me sometimes if I regret not confronting him that first night in the hallway, jacket still in my hands. I don't. Because rage tells everyone what you know. Patience lets you decide what happens next. I didn't destroy my marriage that night. He had already done that, months before I ever caught the scent of her perfume. All I did was decide, calmly, on my own timeline, exactly how the truth would be revealed, and exactly what it would cost him when it finally was. If you've ever been the last person in the room to find out the truth about someone you trusted completely, I want you to remember this. You don't owe anyone a reaction on their timeline. You are allowed to gather everything, plan everything, and choose the exact moment the walls come down. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes quiet is the most dangerous thing in the entire room.